Tonight in Circular Firing Squad, we're doing something a little different. We've done this once before, and we're doing a live show. Well, all of our shows are actually live, but we've invited in audience to watch and participate and ask questions if they want to. Now, we're in Zoom, so we can see everybody who chooses to come in. We can obviously hear anybody who wants to ask a question, but we're just putting audio out on this, so your faces won't be in all their glory out on the internet, just whatever audio or questions you choose to contribute. We've got some of the squad with us tonight, and Eric, however, has a terrible sinus infection, and so he's begged off. And Gina has taken one of her mysterious trips to Florida, where her, we think, mafia-related father attorney does work, and so she's down there, and it's and she said she didn't think she could make it in, so she's going to be out for tonight too. So with us tonight, let's hear from the squad.
All right, I'm in then. Hey, this is Jen Cook, associate professor, New England College.
Hi, everybody. Elliott Ingersoll, professor of counseling and host of Apply Topically, and I got my friend Carl here with us tonight if we need any backup.
Steph Martyr, doctoral candidate at Kent State University, practicing clinical counselor and co-host of Grad School Deconstructed.
We actually were going to substitute Carl for Eric, but we realized that Carl didn't have a sweater vest, and so he can't be a substitute for Eric. And for those of you who are seeing the live video, it is not snowing in Elliott's house. He's got a lot of lint he's throwing into the air for some reason.
I'm just buffing the Kleenex, and looks like it's my music stand light. It looks like snow. It's very festive. I love it.
Well, it fits with that's how they do it in the Hallmark movies, I guess. They just fluff up Kleenex and put it in the.
Yeah, I'm like, you're fluffing the Kleenex. Is that a metaphor for something, or?
It makes the sparkles more. I don't know why.
So let's get to a first question. Do we have anything from the group? Or maybe I'll start with one. This came up while I was driving around today, and I would like your opinion. Are there Sunday drivers? You know the expression Sunday drivers?
Oh, yeah. Except they've taken over every day of the week. There's a pandemic of slow, distracted driving out there. And I, for one, I hate driving. As soon as I get in the car, my first question is, when can I get out? And these people, they're just taking their time. They must be having a good old time. And I don't want to impinge on that, but I would appreciate going the speed limit.
I don't think that there's Sunday drivers the way there used to be Sunday drivers. Like everybody's out for a stroll and just they got their fried chicken in the window, waiting to go have their picnic. It's not like that. But here, I live on the border of Massachusetts in New Hampshire, and I live right by the mall, and I don't know if you all know this, but New Hampshire is tax-free for most things. And so we get like this onslaught on the weekends of folks who are coming in to shop, either at the grocery store, the mall, whatever the case may be. And in fact, like I had to go to a different grocery store because mine was almost completely cleaned out. And it's right by my house, but I had to actually get in the car and drive 7 miles to a different Market Basket because they actually had bread at the one on the other side of town. But the Massachusetts people, we have a name for them, had come in and cleared us out because of holidays. So we have a different kind of weekend Sunday driver here.
Anybody in our guest audience want to say about Sunday drivers?
Well, I think if we think classically, people who have sort of gone too senile to continue driving, and so they only drive when they absolutely must. My hope is that for at least the millennials on down, ride sharing will solve that problem for us as a society.
I'll tell you, I aim to break a pattern in my family. When my grandfather had to quit driving, it was very hard for my dad to convince him. When my dad had to quit, that was really hard. I just told my kids, I'm going to throw a party and no problem. I'm going to give you all the keys. We're going to have a big party and life's good.
That's what my grandma did when she was like, I'm going to say she might have just turned 80. And then 2 years later, she rolls up with a car. She gave her car to my aunt and she was like, yeah, I decided I wanted it back, and went and got another car at like 82, 83. I was like, look, you made the good choice and now you made the not so good choice.
Any questions from the squad or the audience? I'll ask another then. And this is it. This is the bottom of my barrel at this point. Is trauma-informed overused? Let me speak to that for a minute. I teach classes, and most of the classes, or some of the classes I teach, are students who are maybe in their first course or their second course. And some of them even haven't taken theory yet or are currently taking theory. And they immediately say, when you talk about what are they hoping to do, I want to be a trauma-informed counselor. So, I can't get them to tell me the difference between cognitive behavioral therapy and person-centered, and they're already identified themselves as a, quote, trauma-informed counselor. So my question is, were there trends that got overused and didn't transfer into counseling? So look back in your history, some of those hot topics that we had that just have kind of either fallen flat or weren't ground-shakingly changing.
I think the last time I was able to make this podcast, I had asked about research and about trends and fads, and everyone had great responses. But yeah, I feel like it's overused, and it's almost like a knee-jerk. And then it gets like out of control where everyone's like, well, your whole program should be trauma-informed. Well, wait a minute. You said our whole program had to be multiculturally focused. Now is it multiculturally trauma-informed focused? What do you want? It just seems a wee bit much for me.
Well, I'm going to go the opposite way. I think that we have to be lots of things simultaneously. Just like when we're working with clients, we have to be conceptualizing multiple things simultaneously and collecting data in multiple areas to be able to understand what's really going on. And I don't ever want us to go so far to the extreme on either direction that everything is trauma or that nothing is trauma. I don't think we want to do that. But I think that we've spent so much time saying, suck it up and get over it, which I'm hoping ended with the millennials because it certainly did not end with the Xers, which is how I identify. I think we got to find a little bit more balance, but I would not want to see us start to ignore it. Just like I don't think that multicultural is a trend. I don't think I think it's a worldview. I think it's how we should be living our lives, and the way that we should be teaching things is not just from a white, middle, social class, hetero experience. I don't think that's appropriate. So I think that we need to have balance in there. And I don't ever want to see us throw it out completely. That's for sure, because I feel like our world just becomes more traumatizing on a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about how with all of these things, they kind of come in hard, right? And then all of a sudden you see it everywhere, but then over time it kind of almost matriculates through and then becomes just part of the general conversation. And it's just something that you're always considering more so. But I think when it hasn't been kind of like what Jen was saying as much in the forefront, then these things do catch on as trends, but then it kind of settles down and just remains integrated into the thought process, just like maybe some of that multicultural awareness has also done now. It's like you just don't think it's always there. See, now at least I think it's there a lot more. So it'll be the same thing with trauma informed and that kind of thing going through.
I raised the question because I've lived through an era where there are a lot of hot topics. And Elliott probably remembers some of this too. Neurolinguistic programming was going to save the world. That was the thing that everybody was talking about for a long period of time. And then, or even before that, I think transactional analysis. I'm okay, you're okay, parent, adult, child. That was going to be the thing that we were going to do. And we don't talk about them anymore, in a sense. I think some of the stuff from neurolinguistic programming is what narrative therapy is about and what a lot of motivational interviewing. So people are talking about motivational interviewing a lot. A lot of it's NLP and was NLP. So maybe it gets mixed up differently or cooked differently. but I don't think once it rises to the top, it kind of has to either disappear, float to the bottom, or mix in some way. We have a question from Halis. I'm paying attention to the questions in the chat. Halis, do you want to come in and ask your question?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Go ahead. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
All right. Thank you very much. This is Halis. I am an associate professor of educational psychology in Marty University, Turkey. And here I am Dr. Jensius's guest visiting scholar at Kent State University. And my question is actually partly related to what Marty talked about regarding the trauma-focused counseling, especially at the early stages of our counseling education. So trainee counselors may cling to some of the approaches very strongly, and they may not want them to be questioned. So my question is, especially in classrooms at master's and doctoral level, so what do you do to create cognitive dissonance in your trainee counselors so that they can question some of their very strongly held beliefs, approaches, theories, or opinions?
Hello, welcome, Halis. Is that a football jersey you've got there?
I don't know.
I just wondered, World Cup's coming around. I just wondered if you had a team you were favoring there.
I don't think it's something related to soccer.
So something I've done, which is, I don't know if it's pedagogically recommended, but it's worked. And especially in psychopharmacology and psychopathology, where we have very little, almost no knowledge about why people get disorders and when medications work, why do they work? So I want the students to learn what we do know. So that'd be pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics. But then I want them to start questioning the claims in many of the papers we read. And then we teach them, look at who funded the study. So many times it's a pharmaceutically sponsored study. So I want them to then think critically about things that they're actually learning at the same time. I've never seen it in a pedagogy text or andragogy text, however you want to cut it. But it's worked in my class. Just it seemed like the only way to kind of hit the basic material, but then get them thinking about, and this is where the social, cultural issues would come in. But that induces a lot of dissonance because a lot of people, I am horrified at the number of people who are working in a practice, and that practice is still telling clients mental illness is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain. And I'm like, oh, for the love of Mike, we falsified that so many times. My response, Carl, do you have anything to add? No, I'm good. Thanks.
I love the Carl voice. I think actually, Elliott, maybe you should just let Carl talk. But to go to Alice's question, I think sometimes I find myself in asking questions to students in a direction that I don't believe myself, just to get them to try and create a counter argument or think about an argument that would challenge their own particularly strong held beliefs. So, and I can do that quite convincing. I can fake a different way of looking at things like I kind of believe it and then see where they go with it. Although I don't, more than not, I'm in support of what they're thinking, but I'm trying to get them to think outside of just absorbing material.
I like to do kind of a combination of what Elliott and Marty were just talking about. And I kind of make it a little bit of a game of like, what's another reason or what's another response? So sometimes I'll have them do like round robins with a specific topic and they have to give another clinical response. So maybe it's a summary, maybe it's an interpretation, maybe it's reflection of meaning, but they have to keep giving different responses that could be potentially different. And it could be completely on point, it could be completely off point, but trying to get them to go a different way. The same thing with find another reason or give another reason. And this is a technique that I started using when I was teaching sort of the introductory cultural stuff, of just kind of getting the facts out there about what is a non-dominant identity, what's a dominant identity, who falls into the different categories within US, those types of things. And inevitably, the conversation always turns itself to, well, I'm never going to work with insert your population here. that client is never coming to see me. And I'm like, where do y'all get off with this stuff? But we continue this game, right? Of, well, what would be another response? Well, what if that person does walk into your office, and who can just throw something out there wild? It doesn't even have to be your own opinion, but what might a person's response be? And I like to free them from what might somebody else's response be, like kind of as a kind of a freedom technique of like, this isn't your opinion or this isn't your thought, but what might someone think about this? And just start to kind of build from there of like, okay, we have this response, this response, this response. When somebody says something that is particularly out there, like, you know, the brain is just, mental illness is caused by a chemical imbalance. That's another time when we get to play that, well, what might be another reason, or what might be another way to explain this? Because we know that there is something going on there chemically, but that's not technically correct. So who can try another way to explain this that would be a little bit more accurate, you know, and have them help each other to build on things? Because what happens then is that they start to interrogate their own thoughts. They start to interrogate their own ways of explaining, and they realize there's holes. They realize there's holes in their knowledge and their awareness, in their skills of delivery. And I don't know, that's been something that's been really helpful for me. And I also am sort of like a dog with a bone. I'm not going to let it go. So when they're like, wait, these are two things and I'm thinking about them both at the same time, but they don't connect. And it's like, okay, well, what would you like to do with that? Well, I want to get rid of one. Well, you have to keep them both. So I'm just going to let you sit with that. Let's come back to that later. And I mean, this is kind of who I am personality wise anyway. So it kind of works for me. I don't know if it would work for everyone, but I feel like I build the relationship first. So sort of like counseling, and I can get away with that kind of, you know, dog with the bone kind of thing, because they know where it's coming from, that I'm not trying to beat them up, but more so I'm trying to teach them something. And so that's another strategy. I've kind of gone off a little bit, but anyway. Sorry.
Yeah, I want to ask AB. I know you put something in the comment section, and it might have been related to the previous question about trends, but I'm curious if you want to comment on that or anything that you've heard so far about this cognitive dissonance.
Well, I think it's kind of related. I think that we've built a society that's more about money than it is about people. And I don't mean that in an anti-capitalist way. I mean that you have a lot of businesses where the people in management are micromanaging their employees, where they're, you know, people are fired for using sick time or family leave. And I think that we've sort of, we've killed sort of like an office camaraderie. And I think that we don't stop to think about other people. Like, even if we look at the pandemic and mask wearing, it's all sort of been centered on people going, but what about me? And not a lot of thought to, but what about all of us? And I think that's where the appeal is, that yes, it's a trend. Yes, it's a little bit buzzwordy. You know, it doesn't seem to get used consistently, you know, even to a non-professional like myself. But I think it's that there's this real lack of recognizing that we're all people and everybody has things that are going right, things that are going wrong.
I really like that, because for me, we used to, you know, theoretically talk about nomothetic versus ideographic, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, I will cite like the American Psychological Association. One of the reasons I was happy to retire my psych license, I'm like, they are going in the totally wrong direction. They're going into what I would just call group silos, and there's no room for all of us in any group silo. And they don't understand that there are very few laws in psychology. We haven't learned that much about human beings. You cannot rule out the ideographic and, you know, in favor of the nomothetic, and to, you know, to just go down siloed types of approaches to groups. It's okay as a start, but you also have to include what is universal in human beings, because those are the things that will unite us. Our senses of what we identify with and make us different, we might be lovely to share about that, but it will not unite us, is my take on it.
I have a question Mykka has asked in the chat. I asked if she wanted to come in and ask it herself, but I think it follows with some of what we're talking about here. Does constructivist teaching negatively affect licensure test scores? We talked a little bit about test licensure exams, I think the last show we did. And is it it's a form of teaching that she was wondering about. And if we're teaching people that everything is constructivist and relative, how does that help them get through exams that are not constructivist and relative?
Well, I think you got to learn the facts to be able to have that conversation. I mean, that's sort of my 2 cents around it. It's sort of like making sure that the building blocks are in place, which are sort of like that general knowledge base. So if you think about like the NCE versus the NCMHCE, NCE, you just got to memorize a bunch of crap. Marty just took it. Isn't that what you took? It's like you got to memorize a bunch of stuff and regurgitate it multiple choice and call it a day. You look at the NCMHCE, you need to be able to apply the information, which I think is what constructivism is about, is being able to understand the different realities, be able to break it apart, be able to apply it to different people. So it's like we need sort of the baseline knowledge if we think about the Betz pyramid, type of thing. And we got to have that base foundational knowledge so that we can work up to synthesis at the top. I think it's synthesis or analysis, whatever. The biggest one, the best one is at the little tiny top. But basically that we can't really talk about something if we don't get that base knowledge in place. And so I would say that I have no idea what the data are, and I don't think anybody has actually looked at what the data are around it. They're still fighting about whether K-CREP is better than not K-CREP in terms of test scores. But I would say that they're probably going to do fine, especially if they can talk about it, articulate it, and apply it, because then it's a part of who they are.
So I took the NCMHC last year, so a little over a year ago. And well, yes, there is much more of that integration and application involved. It still has some of that memorization to it where, hey, if you are encountering a child who is presenting with conduct disorder, get a behavioral analyst in the house. That's their suggestion. So, I mean, that's how you're going to answer the question. But that's also really not going to be the reality and how it's going to work. So you still have to kind of memorize to the test, but but you can mess you up if you don't prepare for the test and actually have to study to know what the test is going to want for certain situations. Because if you just went in and tried to give your best answer as, a practicing counselor, you're still not going to pass, most likely.
I think for me, I'd need an operational definition of constructivism. I see it paired with deconstructing. I see it paired with neo-Marxist philosophy. I don't really know exactly what people are talking about unless they walk me through their terms. And I'm not saying, Mykka, you have to walk me through your terms. I'm just saying, some of the older I get, the more of these words that get chucked around, I'm kind of like, well, what in the world? What is that actually? And then sometimes, when you say, what is that? There's this deathly silence because no one really knows. No one really knows. And I'm like, is that the case here? I'm not sure. I don't think it is, but I'm like, I don't know. I don't really have a good grip on it myself. Maybe that's the point. You're not supposed to have a grip on it. It's ever evolving. It's ever changing. Ergo, whoever makes the point, whoever is the questioner, whoever is asking the questions has the power. And I've seen that, and it's kind of a perversion of Socratic method played out in this. Well, I'm in this group. You can't understand me because I'm in this group, but I've lived under your rules forever. So I understand everything about you. And I'm like, I didn't make any rules. And they're like, well, yeah. So I get very confused on all this stuff.
Well, what's Carl have to think? I mean, really.
Come on, Carl.
Well, actually, I think the constructive approach has its place, but I think it also has to have some kind of a connection to the base knowledge, which I think Stephanie covered very well. I myself am not a counselor. I'm an entertainer, if you couldn't tell.
Well said, buddy.
Okay. My head hurts. Stephanie, can you ask a question that everybody can answer?
Absolutely. And I think it kind of goes well off of Carl's little interlude there. So, do you like horror movies? And if so, why do you think that is? And if not, what do you think the draw is for like the people who do like them?
I'm just going to go. I love horror films. I mean, I have my limits. I read a book on New French Extremity, and I'm like, I could never, ever watch any of these films. But the author was someone I admire, and she did a wonderful job on the topic. But yeah, I love horror films. And I think it was growing up being bullied. Horror films, especially my very, very esteemed author, Stephen King, he gets what being bullied is like. And he also gets, sometimes when there's a supernatural twist, it's really nice to see the bullies get sucked into some other dimension, like It, stuff like that. I like spooky stuff, though. I mean, Halloween's my favorite holiday. So I think that was that kind of just led me to really love that genre. Here comes more snow. I was thinking I was having allergies all week. Maybe it's this damn stuff in the Kleenex. Who knows?
I was going to say, it might be your Kleenex that's killing you.
That's the title. Might be your Kleenex that's killing you.
Okay. That's we as a group, our listeners don't know this, but at the group, we collect titles throughout the show and write them in the chat room. And then we vote on a title for the show, for the episode. So that's why you hear some of the crazy titles that we have. I'm not a big fan of horror movies, never have, Ben. They just creep me out too much. However, there are a couple, and I can't even remember the titles, that are so over the top crazy that it's more humor than it is horror films. Oh, I can't remember the zombie film with the guy from England. I forget.
28 days later.
No. The funny one.
Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead. Yeah, those kind of things. And he also, Edgar Wright did another one called The End of the World, which has that same sort of bizarre, funny stuff. And then I've seen promos for one coming out at Christmas, which is Deadly Night, Very Deadly Night or something that just looks really funny, weird. But generally they scare. I don't like all it Saw and all that stuff. No, never liked it when I was a kid. But if I'm laughing when it's happening, then I have a different take on it. I just don't want to go through the experiment of finding out if I'm going to laugh at this or if I'm just going to regret this choice.
I liked it a lot as a teenager, and we used to watch them all, from the campy to the I'm afraid to walk home alone type of films. But now I don't know. I feel like reality is terrifying enough. And I do watch a lot of documentaries. So I don't know. I don't need, and I don't know. I read mystery and I read suspense and stuff like that, but I don't need to see it on TV anymore like I used to, or see it in the theater like when I was a teenager. And I think it was more just about like, I don't know, distress tolerance as a teenager or something. I don't know what it was.
Building up that distress tolerance. It served you well. Like, maybe. Okay. Unsure.
I reckon. I mean, as if it weren't already there. Yeah.
Right. Because I don't know. It's weird. I've always had this weird fascination with horror movies where, especially when I was younger, I wouldn't ever be excited to go see them in the theater. But whenever you went to a video rental store, when you go to a Blockbuster or whatever, but I'd be fascinated and look at the backs of all of the horror movies and just to look at the little stills that they'd have and to read about them. Now I find myself, I go through phases and I do like them and I like being able to watch them at home where I can mute them. Elliott, I do agree with you that I'm not into the body torture kind of stuff at all. Saw was my limit. And now looking back, Saw is like tame. Like the original Saw is so super tame. I still fast forward through some of those scenes. But, I just don't need to see someone scream for a minute and a half. But I do like them and I've been watching them more and more. And I get driven by other podcasts that highlight horror movies. And it kind of helps direct me in ones that, I've been interested in. It kind of forces me to go ahead and watch them. So there are some really interesting movies and I've even gone back. So Cube was a movie. So I just went back and watched that and kind of got caught up on that. But then I also watched It Follows. And every weekend I find that's what I'm doing in my spare time. I get 2 hours on the weekend where I can watch something that's inappropriate for babies. So I find that's what I'm doing. And I just love them. I love going into this other world, and maybe it satisfies some deep, dark nature of my brain in a socially acceptable way.
I would add that that book on New French Extremity is by Alex West, who is one half of the Faculty of Horror podcast out of Toronto, Canada. And her other book is The 90 Teens Horror Cycle, which really does a really good job of looking at the final girl trope. Had to throw that in.
We can always depend on Elliott to give the Canadian connection. AB, you mentioned Evil Dead. Evil Dead was one of those that was kind of on the edge for me. Was that one that
There's one of them that's funny. I don't know which one it is.
Army of Darkness,
because I don't do
funny,
horror.
Or Evil Dead 2.
Second one.
Yeah.
Army of
Is it the
Darkness,
second one?
yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's the Army of Darkness
Evil
one,
Dead
yeah.
2. That was where he just went slapstick.
Yeah, that's where he lost
Because
his
I won't
heat.
watch them. Like, my brain does not need the nightmare fuel.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the watching that bothers me. It's what my brain does with it for like the next month.
Well, I have a nephew who really likes films, and not just horror films, but they had an Evil Dead convention in, of all places, Strongsville, Ohio, because I remember driving over there with him to go to this and it was in the Holiday Inn, so it wasn't a big convention. But yeah, that I'd already seen the film, and they had a couple of minor characters talking about parts in the film and working with people. We got another question online here. And Peter, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. I'll ask it. I really liked Stephanie's question, and it led me to think about this. What is your favorite Halloween costume? And I'm thinking about a costume that you actually wore sometime in your life.
I think mine was a wee bit ahead of its time. It was a Grim Reaper drag queen. This was one of the clean-shaven periods. I thought it was great, but the reception was a bit muted.
I went as Samurai Punk, and I went to a party with a girl who I think I only dated a couple of times, and I took a safety pin, put it through my nose. I put my hair back like Punk. I had it spiked up. I had a kimono that I don't know where I got the kimono. And had a sword that was not a real sword. And I remember that, but I remember her costume more because when I showed up, she was in a denim shirt, and she had a sun hat on, and she had little stars and moons hanging from the sun hat, and she had like rainbow colors on her cheeks. And I said, "What's your costume?" And she said, "I'm tripping." And she was both dressed that way and was in that state. And maybe that's why I only went on a couple of dates with her.
One year, I couldn't exactly think of what I was going to be, but I had a t-shirt from Hershey Park, and it just said "Have a Hershey Kiss" on it. So I went out and I bought a big bag of Hershey Kisses, and my friend had some like fairy wings and did a little bit of makeup, but I was like the Hershey Kiss fairy, and I would just go and give Hershey Kisses to everybody that was around. So I just tried to take a silly t-shirt and turn it into something that I could wear to a party.
I love the sweet comment after the Hershey Kiss Fairy.
Any other costumes that people are willing to admit?
I will actually admit to one because I thought of one after asking it. And it was more thought up by a friend of mine who I went to a concert with on Halloween downtown Cleveland a long time ago. And she sewed some sheets up, and we filled them with leaves. It's raking time around Halloween. Supported them with a dowel. I got a rope and a big piece of cardboard, and it was a giant tea bag. It was a giant tea bag, and this was appropriate because the concert we were going to was X, this punk band from Los Angeles, and I was worried about the slam dancing, and the leaves were good cushioning for when the slam dancing went over my direction. I was not an eager dancer, but I was eager not to get hurt.
Peter, you went to an X concert?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were downtown. They appeared downtown Cleveland.
That's very
Love
cool.
their cover of Breathless. That was killer.
Yeah. I had not heard of them before going there, but I learned about them later, and it turns out they were pretty good.
I'm opening it up for questions.
I got a question if you want to just check it out there.
Yeah, go ahead. We've got one we'll get to Mykka's again after yours.
Do you think it requires a concrete. Do you think it requires a conservative, aka concrete mentality to have a successful career as a university administrator?
Jen, you're laughing with your microphone off. It doesn't count if you're laughing with your microphone off.
I'm just like thinking to myself, like, who wants to be employed somewhere else in the future? And, I gotta keep that microphone off, you know? I don't know. I mean, I think that there are some who seem to hold it down, but they don't hold it down very long until they're moving on somewhere else if they are not holding those ideologies. Although it seems quite sweeping to be like, yeah, they're all just, but I don't know. I mean, I'm laughing because it's kind of hilarious, and probably because it's kind of true.
In defense of college administrators or college presidents, they have a lot to juggle and a lot of people they have to satisfy. I feel much more freedom in the position I'm in to be as radical or crazy or challenging as I want to be. And, if I'm upsetting somebody with something I say, then I'm probably doing my job. If I'm a university president and I'm upsetting someone with something I say, then I get in trouble for it. So they have a much larger load to carry than I do in making sure that people around them are not after their jugular.
And do you mean the people who hold purse strings and give donations?
Yes. That's a good point. Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, Elliott, this might not be true for you, but I'm thinking that's where more of the conservatorship may come in, because they're often the big donors. So I don't know. That's been my experience in very limited number, of course, of institutions in which I've worked, but that seems to be where a lot of the dollars come rolling in from.
Anybody else on the in the live chat have something to say about that?
No, they want jobs.
A lot of head nodding. All right. Next question from Mykka. Mykka, do you want to ask it?
Sure. Can you hear me? I'm not sure if you can hear me. Oh, okay. What are some overrated foods, and are they overrated because universally people like it in general, or are they just indeed just overrated and people need to find something else?
I've already been on this a bit in previous podcasts, but cheese, I'm sorry, very creepy food. Next time if you love cheese, next time you eat it, think about the consistency, as you're chewing. Cheese just creeps me out 100%. And people are like, oh, you're going to love, this is blue cheese. I'm like, well, why is it blue? Oh, it's moldy. Yeah, I got mold in my basement I don't eat. I'm not going to eat your cheese. I'm sorry, okay? Not my thing. Not at all. That's mine.
Hi, I'm Lois. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I disagree with you, Elliott. I love cheese, but I do not want to love cheese. So I'm half and half on that. But I definitely, because I don't want to love it, I definitely can see that it being overrated. So
what do you think is overrated?
I don't know. I love a lot of food. I don't know. Nothing is coming to mind, but I'll pop back on if it does.
Okay, please do. I'll jump in since Eric's not here. You know what I'm about to say. Pumpkin spice. Just pumpkin spice. And it's in everything. And I keep seeing ads for stuff that pop up on Twitter and Reddit and other things that are like pumpkin spice infused whatever. And I'm like, yeah, pumpkin spice.
Well, I don't know if this is a food. It's more of a presentation. But like I've had it with the charcuterie movement. Like it is all over the place just because it's called hors d'oeuvres, y'all. You just cut up some meat and some cheese, put out some olives, and you call it a day. There is nothing fancy to this. It is a Lunchable for adults, okay? And recently, like yesterday, I saw somebody on my Facebook was throwing some kind of like workshop about how to create charcuterie. I'm like, are you serious that you need help? Like you need to pay someone money to go to a workshop of how to slice cheese and arrange crackers on a cutting board? I really pity you. And I hope that you never try to actually cook something. So it's not really a food, but y'all, like enough, okay, with the charcuterie.
I just wanted to wait a second to see if there was any charcuterie rebuttal.
No, I got to go with Jen on that. I couldn't even pronounce the damn word after I'd had like 6 plates. And then someone's like, no, it's not charcuterie, it's charcuterie. And I'm like, isn't it just cutting up meat and cheese?
And toss in some olives and crackers. You need to be careful, though, not to get the drips from the olives on your crackers. I mean, maybe that's what they teach in this workshop. I think it's probably just a bunch of people wanting to get together and drink wine. That's my guess. But I'm not paying $49.99 for the privilege.
AB, Halis, anything overrated?
Yes, actually, I think English breakfast is overrated to me. Well, I spent some of the best years of my life in England. I love the UK, so that's something different. But well, the first thing is I wasn't sure whether that was breakfast. Looking from my culture, actually, I understand it's breakfast, but it was just some beans and a fried egg, and it was really overrated, and they were dying for it. So I was having difficulty understanding that. So that's what came to my mind when this question was asked.
You need the full English, Halis. Like, you need all of the meats that come with it and the beans and the mushrooms. You got ripped off. You need the full English.
I'm with Halis. I'm like my Uncle Jack when we lived in Canada. My first name's Robert. They always called me Robbie. And he's like, all right, Robbie, I want you to make me a good breakfast, not that shite English breakfast. All right, then.
I'm still kind of wondering about Awesome Blossoms. I know they're kind of old now, but just a giant, large fried onion, just greasy.
It's a less messy onion ring. Not the making of it, the consuming of it.
Yeah, but we keep getting seduced into them. You know, it's like you get there, it's like, well, sure, why not? And then you realize you've got to, yeah, you think it would be fun, but it's not.
Fun.
Yeah, until you're down in a bottle of Pepto like 45 minutes later.
I think that's the biggest
Or if
problem.
you have my digestive tract, it just shoots through you like a bullet train and you're clear 45 minutes later.
Okay, so I'm going on to another question. This is not a counseling question. I think we need to get a counseling question in here sometime, but we're headed into Thanksgiving. I hope to have this episode out the day before Thanksgiving. Whatever your traditions, whatever your habits in terms of Thanksgiving, what are you not looking forward to?
I can't think of anything, to be honest. I always look forward to Thanksgiving because I committed a long time ago to not traveling over Thanksgiving anymore because it was just too crazy. I mean, it was too much, and there was grading. And when I was a student, there was schoolwork, and it was all due after, And so I kind of just transitioned into like, this is the chill holiday where you don't have to go buy a bunch of shit and get on a plane and run around from here to there and make sure you see every cousin, uncle, whatever, So I'm looking forward to the whole shebang, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we love Thanksgiving. Kind of the same reason. It's you don't have to do gifts. My son and I are going to try to put light house, for the holiday season. We're a wee bit behind because of what's been going on, but we got Halloween stuff. We took it down. It's on the porch. We need to put it in the basement, put the lights out. Boy, and I don't get to see my cousins all that often, and they come up. And so, yeah, I think I'm with Jen. There's not really anything I'm not looking forward to. Honestly, I do like Thanksgiving. It's almost like an emotionally neutral holiday compared to some of the others. And I know people have arguments over Thanksgiving, but my family, we grew up arguing about religion and politics, and it's just kind of, that's the natural thing. So that was never any different.
In general, it's not really a very stressful, over the top. I mean, there's going to be 2 family members coming in from out of town. It's going to be small, like 7 people in total. But for me, every time that there's a holiday and we go to someone's house, which is still better than having them come to our house, but it's like, there's just kind of those times where you're like, can we go? It's time to go home. Like, I just get ready to go, and everyone's together and it's great. and everything. But I'm like, yeah, but it's been 4 hours. And we'll be back tomorrow. So it's just kind of like that point where maybe I'm just not feeling it the same as everybody else after a while. It's not something that's horrible. It's just kind of like that part that I know it's coming.
I'm ashamed of you all. There's not a toxic family in this group. What is wrong? That's all I hear from students is like, I got to go and then we got to do this and then we got to do that. No toxic stories here. Everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Well, I need you to understand my family is strategically, geographically separated. The crazy cousins are all in Texas, and you know about Texas. I don't even need to tell you. And I'm not stereotyping. They're all in Texas, okay? The Vietnam veterans, they're the ones who come here for Thanksgiving. It's fine, whatever, it's all good. But yeah, we do have crazy family. And at the reunions, it can get a little rough. But those are always in the summer when we figure if people get to punching each other out, they're not going to necessarily, drop dead or something. It's just warm out. It's fine. But Thanksgiving, we just don't have that.
Maybe I should set the tone for what I was going for when I asked the question. I want you to imagine 20 people in a small, modest house after having a big Thanksgiving meal, doing all the dishes, deciding to have a family talent show. Okay, so you get where I'm going with this, right?
No, I'm sorry. You lost me. Guests help with the dishes?
No,
Is this
yeah, we
Victorian
do.
England?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It that's how it goes. Again, another sign of a healthy family. Until we get to the annual talent show, that's the piece of Thanksgiving I could say goodbye to. Now, in that spirit, I want you to reflect again on that question and see if we've got any other. No, I'm seeing head shaking. No.
Look, your first mistake was getting them together in the house to begin with. And then the second mistake was that you started some tradition where somebody had to demonstrate that they had some sort of talent. I mean, are they playing spoons and shit, or are they legitimately having a talent?
Don't pit this on me. This was not my idea. This is not my doing.
Oh, no. Well, okay. I understand what Marty's saying. I dated a person whose family were all classical musicians. I'm a kind of pick-up, play-by-ear musician. And at the holiday, they had a talent show, and they're bringing out freaking cellos and violas and violins. And I had a guitar, and, I just played a couple songs. But that was less well-received than my drag queen Grim Reaper costume. I knew right then that relationship wasn't going anywhere.
100%. If I was in this talent show family, I would be starting either dating somebody new, or I would be starting a new tradition of the Sunday, the drive after the meal or something. I just couldn't. I mean, I'm sure I have a talent in here somewhere. I don't know what it is, but I'm not doing 2 to 3 hours of that. My family, when they get together, we usually play games. Or we scratch lottery tickets. That's what we do after dinner. Buy a lot of scratchies and just go to town. And I'm always the one who gets nothing. And the ones I bought for somebody else is $50, 120, they're all cashing in and I'm getting duds, But that's the kind of thing that my family does. We're not real inclined to the talent.
Mykka put in the chat, well, this is being recorded, so nobody really wants to say. I can guarantee you none of the relatives listen to this podcast. So except my daughter. My daughter will hear this, and she doesn't enjoy my being a curmudgeon about it, but she understands it as it fits to me. Every year it's that talent contest or talent. It's not a contest. It's a talent show.
Maybe that's why it's not fun. It's not a contest.
My sister listens to the podcast. So yeah, we're not totally without relatives.
So this question comes from Mykka in the chat room. What is an overused yet inappropriately misunderstood used counseling theory?
I'm going to go with CBT because I think everybody thinks that they know how to use it, that they've got all of the ins and outs of it, and they just have at it and pretty much, butcher it, in my opinion. And I'm not a big CBT person, but actually, I'm not really a CBT person at all. But I've seen a lot of not good application of, oh yeah, sure, we all know this. This is common sense. This is easy. This is straightforward, and not paying any attention to the theory behind it.
I got to go with psychodrama. Golly, I love it. Psychodrama and sociodrama, they are not for everyone. Sorry, getting the light. Oh, boy. Okay, I don't know what happened there, but
You got to tilt it backward.
I'm sorry, Carl. Hold on. Just give me a second. All right. Yeah, psychodrama. There's a lot of good stuff there. There's a lot of shite there. Fritz Perls stole the best stuff. So if you want to know what psychodrama is all about, go to Gestalt therapy, and it's like the best things there, they came from psychodrama.
I'm going to go with solution focused, in particular the miracle question. Stephanie knows what I'm talking about because she's heard me rant on this before. Students, and I mean, there's a bunch of techniques that students try to show me in class, and it's like, nah, you ain't got that right. Empty chair. I love to watch students do empty chair. They really just rush right through it without any processing. But miracle question, and the idea that students ask it, or it's asked in a way that it is a wish fulfillment and not necessarily a awareness on the part of the client that people are going to see how they're behaving differently. So the wish fulfillment is, my mother-in-law would be dead. And it's something that you can't really fulfill. That's one problem with it. And then also it's a situation where the student is not having the person look at themselves and how their behavior is different because the problem's gone. It's just that the problem's gone.
Actually, my reaction was just like, man, I waited too long. I should have jumped in sooner, and I could have used miracle question, and you could have come up with something else from your, repertoire of frowned upon theories or techniques. Because I guess going into that too, I don't know. Now my mind's a blank, and I'm afraid to say anything else because I'll probably mess it up.
That's the self-deprecation we're looking for this evening, Steph.
I got to just throw in object relations because I have no freaking clue what that theory is about. I don't understand the goddamn name. I don't understand the premises. And when you look across the theorists, it's like, what are y'all talking about? It sounds like something really smart people talk about when they're just bored. I don't know.
It's one of my favorite theories, Elliott.
Of course it is, because you're a smart person, Marty.
Yeah, y'all explain it to us.
Walk me through it, my friend, because I don't get it.
I'll send you some things to look at. I'm not going to explain it in the podcast.
While we're talking about things, I'm just going to bitch generally. Gestalt therapy, one of the most poorly named therapies, doesn't translate well into English, comes from German. Really? We really want to hang our hat on that? I don't think we should. And that's why I go back to psychodrama. At least there's some sort of signified that comes up in the human mind. They're like, oh, it's a drama. It's psychological. It's a psychological drama.
I think in terms of this inappropriately used theories, psychoanalysis is maybe one of them, because so everybody talks about psychoanalysis, but I'm not sure if those people know much about psychoanalysis. So people can easily use it and give the name Freud. Okay, definitely we know Freud said many things about different areas of life and human development, but he couldn't have said everything. So it's funny that sometimes in Instagram and Twitter, people just write something, maxim, and they put Sigmund Freud as a name under that, which is wrong, definitely. It's their saying. It's not Freud's saying. So it's becoming too much exploited, I would say.
I'm looking for one more question, and then we'll do a final shot.
Well, I think AB had one about that meme that you put in the chat.
Yeah, I think we should ask AB about it.
There seems to be this whole category, and I see them shared on mostly a site for lawyers. And it seems to be people confessing bad behaviors, and it ends with therapist squirts with water bottle. And so I'm wondering, who do you think is generating these, and what does it say about people who share them?
Oh, so let me read the one for our listeners, because they don't have optics in a podcast. This was posted by Meme Daddy Bay at Meme Daddy Bay. A therapist. So what actions did you take this week to help release dopamine in your brain? I shared a bunch of memes on the internet so I could feel validated. Therapist sprays me with a water bottle. So there are more of these?
There's more of these, and most of them are far more dysfunctional behaviors.
Oh, so it's not just spraying with water bottle?
No, well, they all end with either the therapist says just no or sprays with water bottle.
Oh, so the presenting problem is far more dysfunctional.
Right.
Yeah. What do you think of those? Are we taking a beating in the world of memes?
No, I think it's either therapists venting in meme form or it's people oversharing bad behaviors for I don't know what purpose.
I mean, behaviorism, it works. These behavior approaches, right? I mean, maybe not always in the best ways, but you can get somebody to maybe, but it's that thought though, too, that just spraying someone with a water bottle is going to stop that behavior. No, bad person, spray. And
or it's wishing that would solve the problem.
Right. I think there's a little bit of that too, to think it's that simple, but also it's just to indicate the no, bad client.
When you said who created these, I immediately thought, well, a veterinarian, because that's who taught me that I should spray my cat when they were being naughty. Right. But, I have this idea of well, maybe it's, excuse me, folks fessing up to yeah, I know I shouldn't have done that. It could be the counselors or therapists. Yeah, it's the therapists. It's not the counselors out there who are making these memes because they're frustrated or want to secretly share the stupid crap that their clients are doing that they know they shouldn't be doing. But I don't know. I'd like to hope that it's the clients of the world who are yeah, I know I shouldn't have done that. And I just need to confess it like I'm at church and move on. Then maybe that'll help making a meme about it. But I think what I worry about is I hope people are getting counseling and therapy savvy enough to know this is not what goes on in counseling. Not that anyone would expect to get squirted with a water bottle, but the ones that are just no, it's no, most of the time counselors are not doing that. And I'm hoping people are savvy enough to know that because there's already too much out there about counselors are just going to tell you what to do and give you advice and ask you, how does that make you feel? And we've been spending a lot of time trying to break away from those stereotypes. So hopefully this is people just having some fun and not instilling more bias about counseling.
I don't do much social media, so I really don't know what you're referring to. I've not seen any of these. But when Jen said that, Carl and I, we watched this horror film, Smile. Good jump scares, but the portrayal of therapists, horrific. And because they built this one scene up and they zoom in on the therapist and the therapist says, my most verboten question, how does that make you feel? I'm like, you're the damn therapist. You ought to have how it makes the person feel. You should reflect the feeling. And then the demon is attacking the client and she's kind of rattling around on the floor and the therapist turns her back on the client to call for help. I'm like, no. You never let the client out your sight. Boy, that was a digression. Sorry, but haven't seen the memes. I did see this movie. That was what I thought of it. Back to you, Marty.
Peter, you said maybe it's a Zen thing.
I did. I didn't think of it necessarily as the therapist making fun of their patients, but I just remember all these koans you'd read in Zen literature where, the master would say something and the student would say something and the master would say something that made no sense whatsoever. And then the student would say something and the master would hit him, and spraying with water seems a little gentler than hitting someone, but maybe it's meant to induce enlightenment.
Peter, I always wondered, how many stories do we never get to read about students who hit the master back? They're like, oh, you back on you, FM. Gee.
I've got a final shot question, and I think everybody needs to answer this. So those of you who are staring at us all night long or listening, you can come in. And happy to hear the answer to this question. We're going into the holiday season. We're going to probably try and get a couple of shows in between Thanksgiving and Christmas. But with the holiday season coming in, would you rather attend a party or host a party?
Attend
for sure.
Attend for sure. If the party's not that great, you can leave.
Yeah, I'll attend with you, Peter.
Host because I don't have to go anywhere and I'm only picking the people who come.
Both, because it depends on the circumstances. I like both.
You always like both. You always cop out on these last questions.
I'm an Aquarius. I can't help it. And I'm a counselor. I have high ambiguity tolerance. I'm sorry.
I would host it.
I think I did allude to the fact that I would much rather attend.
I'll jump in with the final word. I would host it and then leave. Best party I ever had was my 21st birthday party. Of course, there was a lot of drinking going on, and about 2 a.m, I decided to leave my own party and went out and had early breakfast with a bunch of people who were soberer than I was at the time. So yeah, all the benefits of hosting, but you can still leave. I guess that's kind of a Jen answer. Both. Yeah. Carl, do you have any final words?
Yeah, I myself prefer hosting parties. I learned that from Barney Knuckles. He was a vaudeville performer. He and I worked together, but I love to host. That's just me.
Well, I guess Carl gets the final word. So let's thank the squad who's here tonight. Jen, Elliott, Stephanie, Gary, Peter, AB, Lois, Halis, Zenip, Fran. I'm seeing who else. Mykka, of course. Peter. All of you, thanks for joining us tonight and for putting in your questions and your comments. Look for some of these characters on their podcasts on the podtalk.net. You can find out more about them at circularfiringsquad.net. Our theme music is from Menage a Quad, Real Swing Shet. That's it for this episode of Circular Firing Squad. Ready, fire, aim.